What's going on, everybody? Gunnar here, and today we're gonna build a beast. Alright dudes, this is the fly that you're about to watch me tie. This is something that's really cool. If you look at this, I think the tail came out about 10% too sparse, and I wish there was an extra tube right here to control this silhouette, because it goes from a skinny tail to a little bit of bulk, a little bit too abruptly. Check this out. So what I'm going to do, and this is the coolest thing about this fly in my opinion, is I have a little product on the back called the slide lock stopper bead. I'll show you guys a close-up on that, but boom, took that sucker off and check out my tail. Ta-da! Here's my fly, here's my hook, here's my wire that it's all threaded on, and I'm going to take this is my bulky section, my third section, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Now because these are all a little bit sparse, I'm going to come in and cut my tubes a little bit shorter so they're a little bit closer together so they fill in the gaps a little bit better. Then I'm going to add a tube right here to help bridge the gap between my tapers to create a perfect silhouette. This is the product that you want to know. Slide lock stopper bead. Check it out. So I'm going to tailor these guys, rebuild my fly, and that is the Build a Beast program. So shortening up the tubes, filled in the silhouette considerably, little hackles for a little bit of length, a little extra movement, added a tube in the middle to help control my taper silhouette. And that is how you can fine tune and customize not only your silhouette, but you can also change the beads, the spacing, and using weighted and weightless beads to alter the action. Check it out. So this fly is Bob Popovics Beast Fleye. That's all it is. Now, Bob Popovics has a really interesting, and in my opinion, a fairly advanced technique for extending the body of a fly, and it's by tying a hollow fly basically on a hard mono core. If you haven't checked it out yet, Bob has a book called Fly Design. Probably the coolest fly tying book I've ever read. Massively impacts my fly tying, but check that out. That's a way to find this beast fly and everything that we've basically gone over in this series. But I want to share with you guys a simple technique that I developed to basically simplify it, make it easier, and give you 100% of the control over your silhouette length taper and fine-tune this fly for maximum swimmability. So this is the platform, really simple. And what this is, it's a bunch of tube sections. So instead of tying on hard mono, or instead of tying on one single long tube and extending it, we've taken one tube, broke it up into about 6, 7, 8 different sections that I like to do somewhere between 3/4 and 1/2 inch. It's not, 1/2 inch is a little too short, somewhere in between. Obviously the smaller the section, the sparser you want your bucktail. If you make it nice and long, you got to use a little bit thicker to make the right silhouette. But I digress. Anyway, we take that long tube, cut it into a bunch of different sections so that it's flexible, and then thread it all onto a thin wire. Now, you can obviously use things like Power Pro. You can use things like fly line backing. You can use things like monofilament. My intentions with this, pike and muskie, I'm worried about teeth. I've been playing with 24 thousandths of an inch nylon coated stainless steel, 18 and 15 thousandths of an inch. The 15 is super swimmy, has like no memory whatsoever. It's super limp, but I kind of like the 18 thousandths, which I'm pretty sure is what Greg Senyo's Intruder trailer hook wire is. In the size 6 or larger, it's about 18 thousandths. So that's what I'm using to extend it. Now when I posted this original picture, which was actually a big Lake Tullibee that I tied, Blane Chocklett commented on it, and this is actually something that he pursued while developing his Game Changer series. So that's a really cool thing. But he threw me a little bit of advice, which was adding tungsten beads in between my tube sections. And it doesn't have to be every other tube, it could be every third tube, it can be one at the end. But anyway, the problem is with this Fleye and doing the extended body in both the hard mono way or a straight tube way or even tube sections and just using glass spacer beads, what happens is this has more material drag than it does momentum. You strip the Fleye, boom, it stops, all of it stops. It stops perfectly straight, no swimmability. The reason why, it has no momentum. It has a bunch of water drag, but everything's weightless. The moment you put spacer beads in here that are made out of tungsten or brass or copper or something, boom, the front stops, the tail keeps going, and those mass points acts as hinge points. You can see it's hinging right on that mass. It's like literally it's so consistent. Wherever you put that mass is the hinge point because that keeps going. You can see like I'm holding the tungsten. That's the bead that keeps going. Boom. Causes the whole system to hinge. And so you interlay these weighted beads, front stops, tail keeps going, gives it the craziest swim action that you can do. Now, when Blane told me that, I was like, okay, that's wicked cool, but now I have to tie another Fleye and try something different, right? And this is like an hour-long tie, at least. It's like, I don't know, 20 different hollow ties in this section. So it's like, it's a very time-consuming pattern to tie correctly. Now, growing up, I remember this product that I could use to control the distance of a cone was from my lure, and it's called a slide lock stopper bead made by a company called Wigglefin. And so what I've done is my wire extension with all of this tube joints is finished off with this stopper bead, which is just a nylon plug that has a laser cut in it. And what you can do is this slit, you grip it perpendicular, slide that sucker off. Now all of this tube section, everything that I've done can come off. So the coolest thing about this is I tied this Fleye. This was the Fleye that had all the glass spacer beads in it. Blade commented on my post. I took the nylon plug off, took all of my tube sections off, rethreaded it with the tungsten, reclosed it with the nylon stopper, and got to test it, and boom, it was like a totally different Fleye. So that's probably the coolest thing that I want to share with you guys is that nylon stopper. And so what you can do now is you can tie this Fleye, and you tie one tube section at a time, and I'll just do like a straight tie, hollow, 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 hollow. And when you thread them all on, well, if you don't like your finished silhouette, take it off, switch the positions, change them. If you want to add different colors, you could literally sit here for an entire evening and prep like 100 of these things, thread them all onto different extended bodies, alternate all your color combos, do whatever you want, make a bunch of Fire Tiger stuff, change the position, orientation, rebuild the entire tail from scratch. You could rebuild the entire Fleye from scratch, obviously except from the hook. You have this, maybe half of these things get torn up with teeth and you replace them. Maybe you have to cut a hook to save a fish. You can take all these tubes off and reuse them on another Fleye, right? So it's just like Fly life, durability, customization, and the ability to fine tune your mass. So instead of having to tie, I don't know, a dozen or 15 or 20 different patterns with different lengths, different style heads, with different bead weights, you know, copper, brass, tungsten, medium, small, large, every single one, every third one in the back, one in the middle. Like, instead of trying to come up with all these variations, I can tie one Fleye with one extension, and I can customize the tail to fine tune it, taking off and on my nylon plug and then swim testing each one until I find the one that I like. I think that's wicked cool. Now, this nylon plug, if you go to a really thin wire, like say 15 thousandths, and you reef on it, you can get it to slip. You can. If you go to about 18 or 24, not so much. It has quite a bit of friction on it. It's not going anywhere. Now I say this because it's not going to come off while you're casting and testing stuff, but if you had a short strike right on that thing and a pike or a muskie bit down and you stripped it, potentially it could come out. So the problem, or the solution to that, and I'll just show you on this one. So the solution to that is pretty simple. Once you have your fly fine-tuned, you like everything about it, you know all of your mass, your spacing, you fine-tune the silhouette, change all your bead spacers, which, by the way, we're going to tie this the same way Popovics ties his Beast, which means we're going to use the same length bucktail, we're going to use the same distance between each tube. So it all stays the same. The tubes are all cut to the same length, and the bucktail is all tied in at the same length, but you flare it and control the taper by how you reverse tie it, and it builds a perfectly teardrop silhouette. So that's the thing that we're going to do. Now, if you tie this in a little too dense, you can add a glass bead, bump up the space. If it's a little too sparse, you can take the glass bead away, seat them next to each other. You can fine-tune little errors in your tying and basically hide your mistakes by either adding beads, taking away beads. You can cut your tube a little bit shorter. Like, the whole build the beast allows you to build it perfectly. If you make a mistake, you can hide it, you can cover it up, you can take away and add spacer beads to basically create the silhouette that you want at the end. So you don't have to be perfect the first time around. Pretty cool. Now anyway, back to this thing. Once you have that all fine-tuned and you figure out the weight that you want to use and where you want it, well, you can just take a really small crimp sleeve, and I'm talking really small. This is a size 2 crimp. What is that? 33 thousandths of an inch inner diameter. That's really wicked small. Boom. Thread that on. Obviously you should probably use micro crimpers for this, but get the idea. Boom. Crimp that in place. And now your slide lock bead won't ever come off. Or you could just take it off and put a crimp and a bead on there. You can reuse your nylon stoppers. Anyway, but once you find the finished silhouette and everything you like and everything you love about it and it's fine-tuned to perfection, you can take just a little tiny crimp, lock your wire in place, the whole fly is 100% perfect, good to go, and you can fish it for the longevity of the hook, and then cut it off and reuse your tube sections. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys this recipe. This recipe, which is a hollow fly for the entire fly except the last 2 stacks are just straight tie. And then it has a strung fuzzy fiber bulkhead. It's tied on a 6/0 TP610, massive gap, nice thick wire, awesome predator hook. And the extended body is with Senyo's Intruder trailer hook wire, 18 thousandths, which I believe is the size 6 or larger. And I'm going to show you how to rig it all. What I'm using for tubes is I'm using the large rigid tubes. You want a nice hard tube that you can pull and cinch your bucktail on and it's going to flare. And I like a wide diameter tube. It's a little tricky to get all the bucktail distributed evenly, but what happens is you get a little bit of you're not taking a boatload of bucktail and putting it on a really thin shank, but you're putting it on a pretty, boom. Like, you get a lot of surface area. So you get a little bit of bucktail per surface area and you can tie it down really securely, really durably, and it builds a really fast hollow fly because it's a nice big bulky diameter and it's forgiving to build your cone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these tubes and I'm going to use it at its full length. So that's going to be the entire tail section. So whatever this is, I don't know, 6 inches. That's what our extended body's going to be. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to cut it about there. And that's about as helpful as I'm going to be. It's literally somewhere between 3/4 and half. Half is a little bit too small for me, I think. But what I've found just in the ones I've played with is I'd rather go small and tie my bucktail in sparser because it goes faster. It's easier to hollow tie a sparse amount of bucktail than I would if I were to go heavy, I'd have to use quite a bit of bucktail, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, and it takes longer for me to hollow tie. Now I'm going to do the entire fly with 140 power thread. 140 power thread, good to go. And I think that's everything you need to know for right now. This is my HMH 2-fly converter. Booyah. Fits in there absolutely picture perfectly. Because my tubes are so short, I don't need to reinforce them with a pin or anything. I'm just going to lock them in place. Now for the entire fly, I'm just going to do a sparse veil of polar flash. Basically down the entire fly. Then when I get onto the hook, I'll counter shade it and use a dark flash on top and keep this on the belly. Our bucktail, as I mentioned earlier, it's all the same length. So just get a nice average bucktail. You don't need something crazy long. I like a little bit more structure when I get to the front, but basically I'm just going to use all this mid-range hair basically for the whole fly, and when I get to the hook, a little bit more hollow, shorter fibers, especially for the forehead. But I'll show you this first one, and this is kind of just how I do all the tubes. And then I'll fast forward and show you guys the hollow fly technique, which is the only thing missing from this beginner fly tire series. I don't know where my good scissors are. They're there. And I'll show you the hollow fly technique, and then the whole video is basically going to be in fast forward until we get to the head. So, check it out. Obviously for the first stack, sparse is very good. Want it nice and sparse. Basically, I'm just going to give that a nice straight cut. Spin up my thread. Catch that with 3 loose turns. Add a little bit of pressure just while I walk it around so I don't push it out on accident. Gonna try to do this without my lamp so you guys can see fairly well. Even it out, even it out. Boom, boom. Flare that down, and then what I'll do is come in and I'm just going to put this we'll do this. Basically all I'm going to do is however many I cut, it's easier for me to do like 2 on top. Spread that around, do 2 on bottom. Spread that around. That to me is a little bit easier than trying to force everything around and get it absolutely perfect. Then obviously I'm going to hit these with super glue, but what you can do is just refine tune this, so trim that back just a hair, come in with a torch, melt that edge up. And that's going to come in handy when we go to do our hollow flies, because you're going to burn that up so that you have something to build pressure against with your thread. And so that's our first tie. I'm going to do another one just like that, and then we're going to get into hollow tying. Alright guys, so I'm coming into my final tube here. Gonna start my thread up there, come back up to the midpoint. Throw in a little half hitch. Grab a fair amount of bucktail. Clean out all the butts, get all the short stuff out of there. Give that 3 loose turns. Put just a little bit of pressure on it while you're distributing it. Make sure it's all even. Then I'm going to come in and just cut these butts off, because right now they're not doing anything. And I actually have a little sparse part right here. Let's check this out. Just going to grab another pinch I don't need that much, you know, just like 10 strands. Boom. Fill in the gap. Everything's now uniform. That's why you always want to walk around your hook or your tube real quick and make sure it's even. Coming in with something called a Proto-John tool. Mad River Outfitters actually has a really excellent YouTube tutorial. If you're interested in a little hollow fly tool, you can look those guys up. It's a really nice review. And all I'm going to do is start building up my thread pressure. But before I continue, cut the tube back and melt back a nice little ball here so that we have something to build thread pressure against, so we don't risk kind of using unnecessary tube, but also having our thread slip off the front of it. And then you'll see I can basically collapse. I'll show you the opposite actually. I'll collapse my cone, and basically you just control the taper. You can see that relaxing, 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 flaring, 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 right? You just control the taper by how close up onto the bucktail you tie. That was a poor usage of words. Not how close up to it, but like, you know what I mean? You're not taking this bucktail, flaring it backwards, and then tying over the butts. You're just tying up to the butts. Boom, 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 boom. And you're kind of just pushing it back with a thread cone. You're never actually tying on it. That way you maintain the maximum amount of volume. And that is how you do a hollow tie. So I just have a piece of red grade Senyo's articulation wire, size 6 or larger. I'm going to take one of my slide lock stopper beads and throw it on. And again, all you have to do to get this slot to open, squeeze it perpendicular, thread your wire through, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a tag end on it just so I have something to hang on to and manipulate. And then we're going to take our beads here. The word I was looking for was tubes. But you literally just slide that down the wire just like that. So check this out. This is how I like to put this guy on our hook here. So again, this is a 6/0 Ahrex TP 610. Absolutely a beast of a hook. I'm going to start my thread on there, get way back towards my bend. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put my wire anywhere. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to pin my wire right to the top. Kind of check my length. I want a little bit of slack in there. And I can adjust the slack because I left a little bit of room on my spacer bead, right? So you can adjust the whole thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this all the way up here. And because I don't have a hook at the end of this, I'm not worried about this stuff pulling out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this wire back. And then let's say 1.5 inches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this so that there's only 1.5 inches of my tag end left. And I'm going to take that wire and thread it back through my beads and my cones. And that went through. So my first 2 tubes now have twice the wire thickness, giving them twice the rigidity. So my first hinge point is now created basically by a tapered wire. So I have these 2 first ones are stiff so that my wire is going to resist going up under my bed and following. So these 2 are nice and stiff. Then boom, I have a tungsten bead, and boom, I have a tungsten bead to push forward as hinge points, creating my articulation and swim. And then all I'm going to do is run a hollow fly all the way up till about here, so whatever you deem that is, but I have quite a bit of room up here, And we're going to finish the rest off with a simple dubbing loop with strung fuzzy fiber and make a nice dubbing loop, strung fuzzy fiber bulkhead to finish the fly. So I'll catch you when we get to the front there. Alright you guys, so I got all of my hook bucktail work done, got all of my tail beast done. It's probably going to come in at about 11 inches so far, not bad. What I'm going to do is switch up to GSP to do this head, and all we're going to do is use strung fuzzy fiber and a dubbing loop. It's fairly straightforward. The only trick is you need to build a collar into it so that it gets back into your bucktail and creates a nice little leading edge. That would be my wife playing with my kid. But you want about a 5-inch dubbing loop. Wrap it back to your bucktail base, back up to the hook eye. Gonna load that with some dubbing wax. And so I think I mentioned it, but this is 150 strand GSP. I'm going to take my strung fuzzy fiber and we're going to first do our collar. So I'm going to take just a little pinch here. I'm going to take it from its full length, and our collar is going to be the full length cut into fourths. So that is our collar. Slide that into my dubbing loop here. And I'm not worried about tapering any of this basically yet. Then I'm going to come in with what's going to be my head. Cut another patch. So it's that full length here. Come down, cut it into quarters just like our collar. Thin that out a little bit. And then I'm going to cut that basically into eighths, but it's not perfectly 50-50. So I have one section that's a little long that goes in next, and then the short fibers go in last, which builds our nice bulky bulkhead. So I'm just going to distribute this in my loop, get it all nice and clean. You want the closest fibers to you, the short eighths if you will, 50-50. It's going to get you that nice flat-faced, almost Buford-like head. We're going to spin this up. If you get some bucktail trapped in there, try to hold that out of the way. Man, I tried to do this whole fly without that light so you guys could see, but I just can't do this in the dark. Then I'm going to pick this out really well with my bodkin. Spin that up some more. You want a nice, durable, thick, bushy head. And you want to pick it out to the best of your ability. You want this thing, and I'll show you when I'm done, because we're going to draw all of this off to one side just like you would a hackle almost. And you want this to basically be the thickness of your tying thread. And the reason why is so you can pack and pack and pack and pack and pack it onto this head. So you'll see me draw all of this off, draw it off, draw it off, draw it off, draw it off. You see how thin that is? You can see my thread core all the way through that. Ultra thin, ultra thin. And we're gonna basically pack this in here almost like you were packing deer hair on this sucker. It's kind of the goal. Because, well, that is the goal. That's what you're imitating, right? You're imitating a bulkhead, you're imitating a Buford, you're imitating kind of like a Bob Pop's fleece head design, just with strung fuzzy fiber, so you got no water weight. All of the hydraulic, no water weight. Just gonna keep packing it in, packing it in. I'm only trying to get, half a turn, quarter of a turn each time. You want to pace yourself. Luckily this 6/0 has a nice aggressive hook eye, so be able to tuck it all up behind there. And then the trick to getting a super durable dubbing loop is when you go to tie that off, you want to catch that once, twice, and I'm pulling up with my loop, down with my thread. You use the two to leverage one another to create pressure against each other, so you can suck that right in behind the hook eye for like 150% durability. Catch it with a hitch, throw in a whip finish, and you are golden. Get those guys out of the way, that out of the way. Shaboom. That is the Strung fuzzy fiber bulkhead. And then, if it gets away from you a little bit, you can just tone it down, any of the stragglers. If your collar hair's got a little too long, but it should be pretty close to not needing any of this when you're done with it. This to me, obviously it's a three-dimensional thing, but this to me is like an absolutely killer sucker profile. That big fat head on there. So that is the Strung fuzzy fiber bulkhead Build-A-Beast. So basically we've gone over bucktail technique, bulkhead technique, hollow fly technique, showed you how to make not only round tubular silhouettes, high and tight silhouettes, also threw in a crayfish and a frog silhouette, showed you a simple recipe for scaling everything down for a smaller forge, and then the Build-A-Beast program can be used for anything from 1 tube up to 10 tubes. Like, you can literally make it as long as you want. Obviously you can now take the tail off, add hackles, make it longer, switch out silhouettes, add bulk, change colors. Build-A-Beast. So you should be able to tie almost any fly in any size range to match almost every baitfish silhouette out there. That's the beginner fly tyer series. So thanks for watching. If you liked it, share it with somebody, and hopefully this helps you guys out. Have a good one.